Okay. Well,
Hi. Welcome
hello.
back. Hello.
We got a doozy for y'all today, boys.
Do we have a doozy? Do
I
we
have a
do?
doozy. I have a doozy today.
I do not. Well, I do, but in a different way.
Okay. So, how was your day/week?
I had a great day, actually. Well, actually, no, I didn't. I had a breakdown this morning. So fun fact about Mythos, so my job is not like a set schedule in the sense that like I get up and go to work at the same time every day. It kind of changes. The last 2 days I've had to get up and be at work at like 8 a.m., which I know sounds like nothing to everyone, but I get up at 6:30 to get to work at 8 a.m. because I take showers in the morning because I'm disgusting apparently. But
You're not, but go off, I
it
guess.
wakes me up. I really can't wake up if I don't take a shower. I also feel gross because I sweat a lot in my sleep because someone, not naming names, likes to sleep with 50 million blankets.
I get cold at night.
And then I'm sweating and dying and like one leg out for the demons.
Well, it's kind of you to leave something out for the demons.
I'm such a giver. Anyway, I take showers in the morning. Anyway, this morning I prepped as much as I could for the next day, but I didn't like do a lot of like prepping for the next day. And Psychos brought up the point that like I literally couldn't have prepped any more because the prep that I needed to do was like getting my food out of the fridge and putting it in a bag. But like today I got to work, my work phone, I dropped it like 4 times, like literally was holding it in my hand and it just fell out of my hand. And I was just having a rough day sensory wise. But I woke up this morning and I was just stressed because I hate rushing in the morning to get ready for something or to go to something. So I had a little bit of a breakdown this morning and then drove behind the dumbest fucking people on the face of the planet today, which I love that for me. Got off work and then Psychos and I went on an adventure to 2 different grocery stores for funsies. And then yeah. That was today though. Week wise, I'm doing great for anyone who cares. I got 110 on my final and I finished out the class with a 103%. So I'm feeling accomplished. I feel like my goal was to get 102. I hit 103. So I could have done better, but I'll take it, I guess.
I'm actually going to like smother you in your sleep if you keep
Do you want to
talking.
mention what my professor said?
So,
Because this is so funny.
Mythos emails the professor about an assignment that they did kind of late and asks like, "Hey, is this gonna get like, am I gonna get a couple more points added to this, or are we just gonna leave it as is?"
At this point, I'm sitting at a 103.39%.
And the professor literally emails back and goes, "Let's not worry about that. Let's not."
She's like, let's focus on you being a lab tech for me next
Next semester.
semester instead. And
Jesus
I'm literally
Christ.
sitting in the middle of a repair shop. I was getting an oil change on my car because I've been pushing it off way too long. Which, by the way, if you are 6,000 miles over your oil change, no, if you're 6,000 miles since your last oil change, please get an oil change. I was sitting at a sexy 6. It's supposed to be every 3 or whatever your car needs. I just don't think 3,000 miles is conducive for oil changes anymore. I feel like they've probably extended that a little bit, but whatever. I'm sure it's somewhere in the manual. I just don't care. But don't take my advice. If you push your car too long and it breaks down, it's not my fault. It's your fault.
Jeez.
I'm not a professional.
Okay.
But yeah, I was literally sitting in the middle of getting my oil changed. My professor's like, let's not worry about that right now. Also, just a heads up, if you hear me in the background when I'm Mythos, if you hear me in the background when Psychos is talking, coughing, I'm not sick per se. I've had a really dry, scratchy throat over the last week. My allergies actually kicked my ass for a week straight. And I physically, like, I woke up at one point like fully sick. So I've just been kind of going through it the last week, illness wise. And this is not the story that I'm covering that's super heavy. I had to push that back again just because there's so much. So the story is not that. So just a heads up, I'm doing the lighthearted story today. I also have sweet Southern Heat barbecue chips today. So we ballin'. And Diet Coke. I love me a good Diet Coke.
You're not gonna want to eat during my case, I'm telling you now.
You say that, and then every time I still do it.
Yeah, and then you look at me when I'm describing things and like it's my fault.
To be fair, I don't know what your case is today, but I do have to talk to a very specific niche of people today. If there's anyone here that plays World of Warcraft that saw the trailer drop for the cinematic trailer for the War Within expansion that's coming in August, I need someone to go back and watch that trailer and tell me that there's not two scenes of a fucking creature that looks like a new race that we're getting that looks like a fucking avatar from the Avatar movies. I need someone to validate this because Avatar is like ironically, unironically, like my favorite fucking movie series. Kind of. I just love it. I love the Here's the thing. I understand that it's like, Pocahontas 2.0 or whatever. Um I love the world building. That's what I love about it. I love the world building. I love the complexity of how they've created things, how they've gone about creating like an alien species, an alien like an Earth like alien planet, the fact that the language is fully fledged out and you can learn it, and yes, I am doing that. And just fake science behind all of it. I love it. I think building wise, it's amazing. I understand it's like a tale as old as time. Way of Water slapped. You can fucking come for me. I don't care. This is my Hindenburg.
Oh
Um,
my god.
but I am so praying that that was in fact a new race and that we are getting a new race with this expansion. They're putting the level cap I think up to level 80 now because you can get a booster up to 70. So I think they're boosting it up to 75 or 80. So that'll be fun so I can actually level up my fucking Death Knight again. But if anyone out there saw it, I just need someone to be as excited as I am about this new expansion and also pray that this is a new race that looks like the Avatar aliens. Also, the mounts for this expansion look like shit, but whatever. Dude, the freaking bonus mounts always look like ass. You get cooler monthly ones. Anyway, not the point. How are you, Psychos?
I'm hanging in there. Um
What are you doing over there?
Briefly rereading my notes so I
Oh
understand.
yeah, because you did these like 4 months ago.
Not 4 months ago. I did this like a month ago. I this past week has been so stressful
It's been a lot for you.
and I'm
You turned in your 2 weeks this week.
I did. I did do that. And then but also because of the stress, my chronic illness is kicking my ass and my doctor's just like, why don't you start doing this, this, and this?"
Have you been taking your vitamins?
I only take those once a week
All right.
because of how fucking much they are. Oh yeah, by the way, I have like no vitamin D at all in my body.
Yeah, literally, I was at work and I got a text from Psychos being like, my vitamin D, it's like 30 is like average, and you were like below 10, right?
No, 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 no. It's in order to be considered like healthy, you have to be between 30 and 100. In order to be considered like the not great zone is between 21 and it's between 20 and 29. That's the that's not great, but like we can get that up pretty quickly. I'm like below 10. My doctor was just like, "Yeah, no. Yeah, no." So I'm currently on a vitamin that I have to take once every week, and but it's 50,000 units. I have to take one pill that is 50,000 units of vitamin D every week for the next 3 months.
And pray that that gets you up to a normal amount.
And pray that it gets me up to a normal amount. But after that 3 months, I'm going on something that I have to take like 2,000 units a day. But that's after I have to take another blood test to make sure that my vitamin D levels are where they're supposed to be. Now, for my chronic illness, though, having low vitamin D is actually pretty standard across the board. So it's not great, but it's kind of normal for where I'm at in general. Of course, it doesn't help that we live in a fucking cloudy and rainy ass area anyway. Are you ready to rock and roll or
Whose I am.
some major pretty bad trigger warnings before we get started?
I don't
Cuz
know what we're talking about today, by the way. I'm going in fully blind.
I'm not going to ask you like any questions. I'm going to give you the trigger warnings and some important information before we get started. And just a heads up, a lot of my notes, I did write a lot of these myself, but others I have like fully just taken chunks from other articles who could put it better than I could. Because this case, before we really get into it, I honestly considered dropping this case just because of how uncomfortable I was getting with
Oh,
it.
good. Well, we haven't cried on the podcast in a while, so.
Like, I unfortunately do have a very strong history with sexual assault.
What the fuck is this case?
So, I do have, like, because of that history, a lot of things I have to be wary of because my triggers aren't as bad as they used to be. The more time goes by, the lesser my triggers get. But this one is hitting, like, all of the bad shit, so.
And just to make it very clear, it doesn't matter how long it's been, if your triggers are still just as bad as the same as the day that you got the trauma, you're still a valid person. I'm talking to you, Psychos. I don't know why you're not looking at me.
Well,
You're
okay.
still completely valid as a person if your triggers are still bad.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My triggers haven't been that bad, mostly just because I have had a lot of therapy, and I'm still going through it, but it's fine.
And me, and I'm annoying.
Alrighty, some trigger warnings before we get started.
Yay.
Rape, torture,
Okay.
and victim blaming.
Oh! Trifecta.
Yeah. So very, very important information before we get started.
Okay.
Rape culture is everywhere in the world, and we're stupid if we're going to try to ignore it.
I think I know what you're talking about now.
However, in India,
Yep.
it is a very stark difference from what we used to in America. While
Mhm.
victim blaming is huge here, it's like not to compare like different people's traumas, but like it is arguably worse in India.
Okay.
This case is actually what brought to light just how bad women in India actually suffer from this rape culture in India. And that's not to say that women have it any easier in America, but every so often there are cases that sort of make everybody realize, wow, this is super fucked up. This is one of those cases.
Okay.
Now, just to give an example of how rough the culture is regarding rape and sexual assault in India was, and still is, from what I understand, the victims' names are never made public. That's actually a law, but that is not to protect them from their rapists. It's actually to prevent the shaming of the victim. If anyone was raped during the time of this case, and if I'm not mistaken to this day, though this case has done more in favor of the victims, and people found out about it, the victim was immediately blamed. No questions asked. Yes, there are laws against sexual assault and rape, but it was just the culture that the victim was wrong and there was nothing wrong with what the perpetrators did. Some men, a good majority of them in India, actually believe that if a woman, however unintentionally, gets a man quote unquote excited, then she is consenting, regardless of any other sign that she is not consenting in the slightest. Even if she only smiles at a man, they often take that as a symbol of consent. In India, a woman is raped every 18 minutes, and those are just the women who report their assaults. However, in every country, they have incredibly awful statistics in regards to sexual assaults. Across the world, across the board, sexual assault is one of the least reported crimes, but with the most victims. A poll in October 2017, the first of its kind in the world, by the way, which was published by the Thomson Reuters Foundation, found that Delhi was the fourth most dangerous city in the world for women, but it was the worst city in the world for women when it came to sexual violence, rape, and harassment. So it's fourth overall in the world in terms of like murder and other crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to rape, sexual violence, and harassment, it's number one.
City?
City. And that's Delhi.
Oh.
They report needing to wear clothing that covers their bodies in order to, quote, make them feel safe. Public officials and commentators in India often claim that women who wear, quote unquote, skimpy clothing and go around partying with other guys invite these attacks and thus cannot claim it is rape.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, a lot of the clothing that these people are claiming are skimpy is just Western clothing. It's jeans, it's t-shirts, it's sweaters, it's baggy clothing that you would not typically see in the Indian culture.
Mm-hmm.
But because of how sexualized Western things tend to be, it's like an immediate, like, this is what's going on. And because of this, women don't wear Western clothing in public at all whenever they're in India, because it's the fear that they're going to provoke these types of attacks. Now, the discussion surrounding women's attire provoking assault, is described as victim blaming by government officials, social commentators, men, and even other women. As society and the Indian government have not been able to successfully address the root of the issue, women resort to strategies to feel safe. Some of these strategies include ignoring sexual commentary, avoiding direct eye contact with men, dressing more modestly, and refraining from going out at night. This has escalated to women avoiding public spaces altogether, including public transportation, feeding into the expectation that the women should stay at home and that they belong at home. Critics actually claim that these avoidance tactics are just a band aid solution to a much deeper issue relating in victim blaming and the accountability for men in Indian society.
Yeah.
And today I'm going to be talking about the attack and the death of the young woman who actually helped legitimately cause a worldwide movement.
Mm-hmm.
Her name was Jyoti Singh. Jyoti Singh was born in the Balia district of Uttar Pradesh to her parents Badranath Singh and Asha Devi on May 10th, 1989. She was part of the Buhamar community and her family was actually Hindu. She was also the eldest of 3 children, and her brothers are Gaurav and Sorv. My bad.
Me.
Her mother Asha was a stay-at-home mother, as in India at this time there weren't many opportunities for women outside of the home. Her father was actually known as Barry to his friends, and he actually worked in airports as like a baggage handler.
Mm-hmm.
Early in Jyoti's life, it quickly became clear that Jyoti was like a shining star. She was such a happy child and she was incredibly curious. She was very intelligent and her parents wanted her to thrive. Compared to their peers, Jyoti's parents were actually very forward thinking. They didn't care that Jyoti was a girl. She was going to go on to do great things despite their own low income situation. Her father, for his part, had wanted to be a school teacher when he grew up, but due to his own parents' poverty, he wasn't able to achieve the higher education past the equivalent of high school. So he wasn't able to become a teacher that he wanted to be. Both her parents loved their children and were willing to do anything for them. When Jyoti was young, Barry moved everyone to Delhi, determined to pick up more shifts at a better airport so he could afford to send his children to good schools. He also stated when discussing the lack of discrimination between his children, quote, "How can I be happy when my son is happy but my daughter isn't?" End quote.
Oh.
Early in her childhood, Jyoti approached her parents and informed them that she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. Barry was incredibly proud of his daughter and clearly believed that she could do it. However, the schooling costs were his main worry. Despite living in a small home in an alley in Delhi, they actually owned quite a bit of farmland back in Uttar Pradesh that had been passed down through the generations. He and his wife made the undoubtedly tough decision to begin selling it off to raise the money to be able to send Jyoti to the best schools so that way she could achieve her dream of being a doctor. Of course, their extended family went insane, demanding to know why they gave up something that was so important and had been in their family for generations for a daughter.
Oof. Yikes.
Yeah, but Jyoti's parents didn't care because she was such a good and smart girl. She graduated from high school with extremely high marks. After Jyoti graduated, she began to worry about the financial strain she was putting on her parents, so she took a job working at an international call center from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Now, juggling this job with school and studying often meant that she would only get about 3 to 4 hours of sleep every night, but she was determined to make it work because she truly believed that a woman could do anything a man could do, and Jyoti knew that this was the right path for her.
Mm-hmm.
As Jyoti progressed through college, she realized just how expensive medical schooling could be and refused to let her parents pay for it, so she began to expand her search in the medical field to find something that she could do that would still allow her to help people without putting her parents into some more debt.
Oh.
In addition, she also unfortunately failed the pre-medical test, a necessary test that everyone had to take in order to enroll in a pre-med program.
Mm-hmm.
She stumbled upon physiotherapy, which is just another word, physical therapy. I saw physiotherapy and I went, "What is that?"
What does this mean?
And I felt dumb when I looked it up and it was just physical
What are these
therapy.
words?
Yeah.
A whole new
I
world.
felt more than a little dumb whenever I looked it up and was like,
Oh,
"Oh, that's what that is."
I feel stupid now.
Yeah, it's fine. Anyway, she fell in love with the practice and actually threw herself into the schooling for it, enrolling in a physiotherapy institute in Dehradun. During this time, she began to shed the traditional clothing that most women in India wore.
Whoop whoop.
She starts wearing jeans and t-shirts, and that's something that many people looked upon as just another reason why Jyoti was not really accepted by her community. However, she was thriving, and she swore to her parents, who, by the way, were getting more and more worried and concerned about her safety, that she was being safe and that she would be able to change their lives soon.
Oh my gosh.
Jyoti was determined to provide for her parents the same way that she was provided for growing up.
Big sad.
Now, in 2012, Jyoti moved back to Delhi, taking an internship in what was formerly known as Gurgaon, now known as Gurugram.
Gurugram?
Mhm.
Okay.
Now, in order to celebrate landing this internship, Jyoti Singh decided that she needed to spend a night doing something that wasn't studying or working. She begged her mom for permission to go, reassuring her that she would be home by 9:30.
You've given me a time. That means something bad happens today.
So on December 16th, 2012, Jyoti was 23 years old and ready for a night that she could spend as she wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
She agreed to meet with a friend whose name was Arindra Pratap Prady.
A woman?
No, man.
A man?
Mhm.
Oh.
Someone she'd known for 2 years at this point, and together they were going to go see the movie The Life of Pi.
Oh, okay. Side note, I hate that movie. Let me explain.
Okay.
I love the concept of the movie. The main character annoys the shit out of me for some reason. It's a beautiful movie. And I love the plot when they're not on the boat. But the main act, I don't know why he just drove me, just on the boat, he just drove me fucking crazy. Every other aspect, I was like, yes, love. But for some reason, whenever they were on the boat, I wanted to scream. Maybe it's me.
Maybe the book was just better.
Probably. It's a really beautiful, like, it's a stunning movie.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it?
No.
Oh my god. Genuinely, it, like, the story, the backstory to him and, like, what's happening with him, amazing. Love it. Love the main love interest, most beautiful person on earth. But the plot of him on the boat, I hated it so much. Anyway, but it's genuinely, it's a gorgeous movie. CGI is amazing except for like one scene. It looks really good.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
No. Now Awindra was actually from. Forgive me for this.
you got this.
I looked up pronunciations for everything, and then it.
If you were wondering, neither of us speak any languages or dialects native to India.
Sorry, I
Hope
really
that
am
wasn't
trying.
contrary to any popular belief that you guys held.
So he was actually from Gorakhpur.
Can I say something really fast? It's going to
Hmm.
cause a lot of problems. I know there are probably a lot of people, because I had this thought too when you were describing it, and I immediately hated the fact that I thought that. Because what do you hear 9 times out of 10 when something bad happens in true crime and the person is described like how you're describing her? What in 9 times out of 10, what do people say?
She lit up a room.
No. Well, yes, but why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
I immediately thought that. I'm like, oh my god, she's such a sweet, like, person. Why did this have to happen to her? Like, why this? And I thought it, and then I immediately thought on it for like 2 seconds. Here's why bad things happen to good people. I know why. They happen to everyone. But we only ever hear about the people who were deemed good people by society.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure this has happened to many people who story wasn't as heavily told, or who didn't come from a loving, caring background, or who were not deemed as contributing to society by wanting to become a doctor. I'm sure there were people who were just minimum wage workers, who were sex workers maybe, who have had this happen to them, but their stories aren't being told because we physically don't have that resource, because those stories are never reported on. So it's not that good things happen to bad people, it's that only good people's stories are told.
Yeah, and
Which is a societal issue.
Yeah,
So
and
I thought that, and I immediately was like, I have to check myself, and I got to check anyone who's thinking the same thing right now.
yeah, no, and to be fair,
You've been checked.
I actually had no idea about this case until I started looking at like different cases like outside of outside of the US, cuz I do have some cases that are coming up that will be focused like heavily in the US. And I was just like, okay, most popular popular cases in this country or this country, and that's the only reason why I was able to stumble across this case. I had no idea about this
Yeah,
case
international
before that.
cases are not told in the US, and I just want to go ahead and give a disclaimer to anyone who's international who's hearing this. Any information that is wrong on our end, sometimes it is our fault, yes. I do want to make a point to note that while we are in the US and we do have like quote unquote freedom of information,
We most
we
certainly
do
do
not
not.
always have the actual story of what happened. So like if you want to sit here and be like, "Oh my god, Americans are so stupid, they don't know about this, and this." Our school systems are actively trying to teach people that the Holocaust didn't happen. And like that's a belief. Like the fact that people can believe this dumb shit is because we're actively being silenced for it. I didn't know half the shit that happened in World War II until I actually talked to someone who was from Germany and learned that they learned things wildly different than us, which I imagine Germany learns things wildly different about World War II than we do anyway. But so if we say something and you're like, "Oh, well, actually it's way worse," either one, we couldn't translate that information, or two, that information is being actively silenced. So if we don't hear about a local murder that happened in your area or your country, if you want to request us to do that, we can do it. But if you don't request us for it, we probably won't be able to find the information. It's fucking difficult to find murders that happened here. Information about the shit that happened here. Unless it can be easily publicized, they don't talk about it ever.
Yeah. So sorry about that side tangent, but we had to like.
I just needed to mention it.
Now, Arindra was actually from Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh, and he met Jyoti through a mutual friend. And many people and many sources actually listed that they were dating at the time, because I don't know why. I think
Probably to justify what happened. I'm assuming
probably.
he's the one who does something.
Actually, no. This
Ooh.
case, at least in the very beginning, actually strikes a lot of chords, at least with the similarities with the Sophie Lancaster case.
Oh, fuck. I'm back in the building again.
Yeah. Now,
What was his name again?
Arindra?
No.
Oh,
Sophie's boyfriend. Robert?
Robert.
Robert Maltby?
Robert Maltby, yeah.
I think about him every day, by the way.
Aw,
The people that I think about every day, the Romanov daughters and Robert Maltby. I
I'm-
think about him literally every single day. Every time that a listener comes up from the UK, I think about him.
Oh,
I hope he's doing okay.
yeah. Arindra
I
will
hope he
be.
never listens to our
I
podcast.
hope so too. I think he's kind of tired of it all.
He's like, I don't want to hear shit. And
Yeah.
you know what? Good for him.
Yeah, no, Arindra is kind of the Robert Maltby of this case. And unfortunately, while what happens to him is very important, he's not the priority here. And it sucks, but
It doesn't. Like, it does, but it doesn't. I think the context of what societally is going on is a little bit more extreme.
yeah. And like Arindra like actually beats himself up over what happened to this day. He is still very heartbroken, and I'm sure he feels awful for it.
Oh, baby.
And I feel sorry that this happened to him and this happened to a close friend of his. But unfortunately, he is not the one I'm talking about today. He is just somebody who happens to be there at the same time.
It's so tragic how many people get caught in the crossfire of the cases that we discuss that will never be able to get the closure of having their stories talked about in the same seriousness as the people that they're in association with, because that trauma is still so real for them that it's very disheartening to think that those people feel like maybe, oh, well, I can't grieve because I'm still alive. And that also sucks, you know?
It's heartbreaking and I feel awful, but literally doing the research, I tried to do what I could to find anything about him, but any and all sources listed him as her boyfriend, as Jodi's boyfriend.
And he was not.
And he was, as far as we know, he was not. But also that he was there that night. He did get attacked. He did get beaten.
Could it be
but
a cultural misunderstanding? Because I know, like, the only thing I think about is like Korean. Like, if you were to, if like maybe like a linguistic issue where it's like the word is translated as boyfriend, but it's not boyfriend.
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. because that's something that
I tried.
actually, like, I tried to watch some videos of people who are from India talk about this case. They, at least the people I saw, did agree that they didn't believe that he was actually her boyfriend, but because of how victim blamey everything is, Jody's not married. Jody's out on the town a night without a guardian, without a male member of her family, with another man.
Oh, societally speaking, that would be more damning than her just
Mhm.
being out with a friend.
Mhm.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
I see. I had to put it in cultural context.
Yeah.
I'm back on the train.
Okay. And so because again, nothing was ever confirmed that he was actually her boyfriend. I do believe that they were just friends.
Love that.
As of right now, he worked and continues to work as a software engineer. Before we do progress any further, Singh, the last name Singh, is the equivalent of the last name Jones or Smith here in the US.
Oh.
So I am going to, in a minute,
Isn't the last name Wong also really common too?
as far as I know, in India,
No, like in China.
maybe.
I was thinking about that.
I'm about to introduce you guys to a lot of people at once,
Mm-hmm.
and some of these people do share the same last name as Jody, but there is no relation.
Mm-hmm.
So Orindra and Jody go and see the life of Pi in Saket. Now, after the movie, they took a rickshaw to Moon Nurka bus stand.
Okay, pause. For anyone who doesn't know what a rickshaw is, because I've been in one and it's a wild experience, but it's those like 2-person or 1-person, like typically covered, sometimes not covered, like wagons that are attached to the back of bikes. Or I know some people like you can like ride in that, like you have a horse on the front or like donkey on the front, or sometimes people will just like walk and carry you. But the one that I went on was on a bike. It was in Beijing. Um, that's what a rickshaw is. It's a like a covered. It typically only fits like 2 people.
Yeah.
It's just a heads up, unless it's different there. But a rickshaw, by my understanding, is that. So just so everyone knows what that is, it's not like a taxi. I mean, it is, but it's like like an open air taxi.
And I knew you were going to explain it, so I didn't I didn't write an explanation.
I figured you didn't. I figured you were like, rickshaw. And I'm like, I didn't know what a rickshaw was when I first heard about it. And I was literally, they were like, we're going to go on a rickshaw. I'm like, what the fuck is a rickshaw? And I turned the corner and I'm like, oh, that's a rickshaw.
Yeah,
Cool.
no, I didn't put it on an explanation because I knew that as soon as I said rickshaw,
I was gonna jump in.
Yeah, I was like, let's go.
Any chance I get to mention my trip to China, I will talk about. I love China so much. Okay,
Yeah.
anyway. Fuck you for knowing me so well.
So they were just trying to get a bus back home from the area that they were in. Now, unfortunately, for whatever reason, none were actually going the direction they needed to go.
What the fuck?
But a bus soon arrived where a 17-year-old boy named Muhammad Afraz leaned out the window and said that the driver, Ram Singh, who was 30 years old, was accepting passengers for 10 rupees apiece.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Now, Orindra and Jody paid the fee and boarded the bus, seeing 4 other men.
Ooh.
Now, Mukesh Singh, who was Ram's brother, was 26 years old. Vinay Sharma, who was an assistant gym instructor who was 20 years old. A 19-year-old fruit seller named Pawan Gupta. And then finally, an unemployed 28-year-old man named Akshay Thakur.
I don't like where any of this is going.
And what's really...
I would have immediately gotten off of there.
What's really suspicious, though, is once they all got on, these men were acting like they didn't know each other.
Oh, nope, fuck that.
Witnesses would claim to see the 6 men hanging out and drinking earlier in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's very important to note that the 17-year-old, Muhammad, had allegedly only met the other men that day and was just hanging out with them. It's also very important to note that Ram Singh was actually not allowed to run his bus as a public bus due to the fact that the bus had tinted windows.
Ooh. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, actually, no, that doesn't make sense. Not in the U.S. We have tinted window buses, but we also have security cameras on buses.
Mm-hmm. But in the
and we don't have privately owned buses.
Yeah, this wasn't necessarily a privately owned bus. Like, he was
But,
sort
like,
of,
all of our buses are, like, not government buses, but they're, like, city buses.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
like, they're run by the local government, I guess. So they're all government-regulated buses.
okay, that's fair.
So
Anyway,
that's different for us.
yeah, but he did run this bus with the tinted windows anyway, even though he had been caught and was like, "No, you can't do this." He did it anyway.
I for some reason, part of me feels like they weren't really like strict about it.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, y'all need to get better at snitching on each other.
Yeah, for real though. Now, earlier that same day, a man named Jyoti Singh told police that he had been lured onto the bus by Muhammad, the 17-year-old.
Lured.
Shush. Where he was robbed and beaten before being dropped off.
Ooh.
He reported it to 3 constables, who are basically like police sheriffs, who told him that since the attack hadn't occurred in their jurisdiction, he had to report it elsewhere and that nothing could be done.
Oh my fucking god. Just say you don't want to do your job.
Yeah.
Actually, no, they did. They literally said I don't want to do my job.
Yeah, no, they did.
Maybe quit or get hit by a bus while I'm driving it. Thank you. Jeez. What are they going to do?
Now, unfortunately, Jyoti was not wearing traditional Indian clothing.
Oh, right. She's wearing like jeans and a t-shirt.
She was wearing jeans and a black and brown sweater.
Ooh.
Now, does this matter in the grand scheme of things?
No, what she's wearing does not matter.
But it does come up when one of the defendants later on tries to defend himself and pins what later happens on Jyoti.
Yeah, what was he wearing? What's he going to be wearing when I beat the shit out of him with a 20-foot piece of rebar? That's a lot of rebar.
Now, moving on.
It's so I can get momentum and then just thwack his head off like a whip.
Later on, they boarded the bus for Dwarka at about 9:30 p.m. While there were other buses in the area, she was trying to get home because it was currently the time that Jyoti told her parents she would be home by.
I'd rather my kid get home late than not at all.
Yeah. Now, Jyoti and Orinda boarded the bus and they realized that the other men are all acting like they hadn't met each other before. And they were like, oh, you know what, it's fine. But they sat down together, just talking to each other about the movie. Now, however, shortly after starting to drive, Ram's driving, Arindra noticed that the bus was going in the wrong direction and that the doors and the windows were all locked.
Oh man, what do you do in that situation?
He started to question the driver about what's going on, where are we going, and that's when the men on the bus started to taunt and question the two. They demanded to know what a young woman like Jyoti was doing out that late, while asking if the two were a couple. An argument broke out between Arindra and the men, and it ended with Arindra being beaten unconscious with an iron rod and gagged.
Arindra's the guy. Okay.
The men proceeded to drag Jyoti to the back of the bus, as Jyoti started screaming and kicking, trying to fight back as each of the men took turns beating and raping her as the driver continued to drive around.
How does no one outside of the bus hear this?
Mind your business. I cannot...
Y'all need to stop minding your own fucking business. Oh my god.
I cannot stress to you enough about what happens after. There is so many people who pass by their bodies and say nothing and do nothing.
I need y'all to please stop minding your own fucking business. Respectfully, stop minding your own fucking business. Because here's the thing. If that was you on the side of the road, would you want to be ignored? No. I would rather someone call the police to make sure that I'm okay if they saw me than walk past and do nothing in the off chance. Like, you know me. If I see some weird shit, I'll mark it down or I'll get involved, and you hate it. But I'll do it. And here's the thing. If you see someone doing something illegal, that is probably not the first time they've done something illegal. And I'm not talking about stealing. But if you see someone being suspicious, trust your gut, they're being suspicious. If they're not being suspicious, no one will, obviously there's nuance to this, especially in the US with certain people of certain colors. But I need y'all to stop minding your own fucking business. I need y'all to be nosy as fuck. If you hear some shit, even if you just think that you heard something off. Mark it down. I mark the time. If I hear like a scream, I mark down the time of when I heard it, just in case. Stop minding your own fucking business and start getting involved, because we got to look out for each other because the government's not doing it.
Yeah, they were also driving around, and it's pretty late at night, so not a whole lot of people are out, too.
Well, if everyone wasn't minding their own business, it wouldn't have mattered.
It's true.
I'm mad at everyone in the story.
Now, Jyoti actually does end up biting 3 of the attackers so hard that she left marks
Good for her.
during the attacks. And at some point, one man, some reports stated that it was Muhammad, the 17-year-old, picks up the iron rod that they had used to beat Awindra and Jyoti with, and actually begins to rape her using this tool.
Oh, God.
The damage was so severe that when this man removed the tool, quote, something long and fleshy came with it, end quote.
So, like her intestines or something?
This was later confirmed to be part of her intestines.
Oh, my God.
Something that the men actually end up pulling a portion up out of her.
And she's alive while this is happening.
She's alive and she's awake.
Oh, my God.
This tool was actually revealed to be a rusty wheeljack handle.
Ooh.
Now, after each man, including the driver, had assaulted Jyoti, they opened the door and pushed both Jyoti and Awindra from the moving bus before going to wash down the bus to get rid of the evidence.
That 100% means they've done this before. I'm so sorry to say this. I don't know if this comes up later. They have 100% done this before. Multiple times. 100%. This is not the first time this has happened. I'm hoping it's the last. I'm hoping they're all dead, because if they're not, I'm coming for you. I haven't threatened anyone in a while on this podcast. We're back. I'm coming for you. I'm violent now. I'm crazy.
Now, at this point, lots of things begin to start happening at the same time.
Okay.
So we're going to be jumping back and forth along the timeline a lot as I follow, like, sort of each part of the timeline.
Okay.
First part of the timeline I'm going to follow is Jyoti and Awindra. I'm going to follow them.
Okay.
Now, the area that they were discovered in was not a sparsely populated area by any means. And later investigation would show that there was no way that the two weren't already discovered before 11 p.m. when somebody finally called the authorities. Now, the person who found the bodies actually took off his shirt and his clothing to cover up her.
Aww.
And he was trying to get people to call not 911, but the Indian equivalent of 911. Trying to get somebody to call the authorities. And it's revealed that a lot of people did see them dying on the side of the road, but did nothing.
What the fuck?
Because it wasn't their issue. And if it was obvious that this woman had been sexually assaulted. And of course, the India rape culture is
strong with this one.
Yeah. Now, both Jyoti and Awindra were still alive at this time, but information about Awindra from here on out becomes extremely sparse.
Well, yeah, she can't tell what happened.
No, Awindra.
He can't tell what happened at this point. I mean, he's beaten so bad.
And unfortunately, there's just hardly any information about him out there. Yeah. He does survive. He does get better. He's still alive to this day.
At that point, though...
Now, they were both taken to... Oh, goodness. Give me a second.
You got this.
They were both taken to Safdarjung Hospital, where medical staff placed Jyoti on a ventilator as they assessed her injuries. She was covered in bruises and bite marks, but she was still able to give a statement. And actually, she kept demanding to give her statement.
She knew she was going to die.
Like, she was like, get this, like, write this down. I need to talk to the police. I need to, like, get this out.
She knew she was going to die.
She demanded to get her statement out before she even got any other medical treatment. And this statement is actually why we know so much about what happened that night.
So she was awake the entire time.
She was awake the entire time.
Jeez.
Now, over the next few days, Jyoti underwent a number of surgeries to try to repair the damage to her uterus, stomach, and intestines caused by the attack.
At that point, genuinely, like, even ignoring the fact that she had her intestines ripped out of her, the fact that there was rust involved, I mean, with the infection would have been way too bad, especially that far up into the body.
Yeah. On December 19th, 2012, Jyoti had a surgery that removed most of her remaining intestine, where doctors stated that she was stable, but she was in a critical condition.
Yeah.
Now, on December 21st, the government stepped in to appoint a team of doctors to ensure that Jyoti got the best treatment she could. On December 25th, Jyoti remained in critical condition as she was intubated and placed on life support. Doctors revealed that she had a fever and was suffering from internal bleeding due to sepsis, but made it clear that the bleeding was controlled and that Jyoti was still alert and communicative.
Okay.
So she was still there.
Mm-hmm.
On December 26th, the decision was made to transfer Jyoti to Mount Elizabeth Hospital in Singapore for better care.
Okay.
However, this decision was criticized by her doctors, who stated that Jyoti was not in a condition to be moved, while her family believed that she should have been moved at an earlier date to get the best care possible.
I agree.
On December 27th, as they were moving Jyoti to Mount Elizabeth Hospital, Jyoti crashed. While they were able to stabilize her, Jyoti went 3 minutes without a pulse or blood pressure.
Oh, yeah, the brain is fucked at that point.
She never woke up.
Yeah. I can't imagine she would have. Transporting a body, transporting a person who's sick and injured like that, I don't think people realize how stressful that is. Like on the body, that movement, that level of just like even a slightly elevated amount of stress on someone who's that injured is literally life or death.
Mm-hmm.
So they should have moved her while they had her in more stable condition.
Yeah. On December 28th, Jyoti's doctors stated that she was suffering from brain damage, pneumonia, and an abdominal infection, stating that, quote, she was fighting for her life, end quote.
No, she's brain dead.
Unfortunately, Jyoti Singh succumbed to her injuries on December 29th at 2:15 a.m. She was cremated under strict supervision and her ashes were given to her family shortly thereafter. She held on, and I cannot stress this enough, for 11 days.
11 days. Wow. That sounds like such a short time, but when you're dealing with that level of agony, that had to have felt like the longest part of her life.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
During this time, the media quickly picked up this case, calling her Nirbhaya, which means fearless, since legally they cannot put her name due to the laws in India.
I'm gonna be angry. Do you really want me to say it right now? You know, it would be a lot easier, Indian government, to protect women instead of paying for their care and assigning their care after they've been hurt. It would be easier and probably cheaper to just, I don't know, maybe put laws in place or actually, I don't know, protect people than assigning medical care
Yeah.
for the people after they've been attacked. Just a thought
No.
and some prayers.
So, at this point in time, people are calling her Nirbhaya, and this is actually what the press and like a lot of sources refer to her as.
Hmm.
And a lot of places also call her India's daughter.
Oh,
Now we're gonna
that's so
sidestep again.
sad. Sidestepping.
We're gonna go back in time.
Ooh, I
To
wish we had a back in time sound.
we're gonna go back in time to the investigation. The investigation actually moved fairly quickly, with police being able to track down and impound the bus the very next day. So December 17th.
So you can do all of this, but you can't protect women in the first place?
So the day after the attack, they have the bus and they locate the driver, Ram Singh, and his brother Mukesh using the bus records, phone sketches, and they were able to track the phones that they had stolen from Jyoti and Indra.
On site. It's on site. What's the driver's name?
Ram.
Ram, it's on fucking site. If this bitch is still alive, he will not be for long.
Now, within 3 days, all 6 had been arrested.
Mm-hmm. Why do I feel like this gets worse?
Pawan Gupta stated that he was guilty and should be hanged.
Oh my god. That's virtue signaling. I don't know how to explain it, but it is.
Mukesh Singh had to be placed in solitary confinement after being repeatedly beaten and assaulted by the other inmates.
Love.
And Ram Singh refused to cooperate, while background checks revealed that Ram Singh had a history of drinking that resulted in violence towards many, many people.
You know what's great about solitary confinement is you can kill someone in there and no one will know.
Well, that's Mukesh. Mukesh is in solitary.
I know. Just pointing it out.
Now, in a weird twist of fate,
Oh!
Ram Singh was later found hanged in his cell on March 11th, 2013, in a room with 3 other men.
It was me. I was the 4th man in the room.
His cause of death was labeled a suicide.
Yep, yes it was. It was a suicide. He did it to himself. No one stopped him. Or we tried to stop him, but he was just so strong, and we couldn't stop it. Yep, I believe it was a suicide 100%. And all those men get a cookie.
Now,
okay, so bus driver's gone.
Bus driver's dead of a suicide. He completed suicide.
Okay, so the driver, we've got the kid, we've got a market guy, and the unemployed guy.
And then we have the bus driver's brother, Mukesh.
How many guys were there?
There are 6.
Oh my god. Brother.
And then we have the gym instructor.
What you're actually saying is the beginning of my hit list. Okay, suicide. Noted. And the devil was working overtime that day. Someone pay him.
Now, Awindra, the male victim, actually gives his testimony in court on December 19th.
Good.
He was able to recover fairly quickly from his injuries.
Thank God.
And he still lives with the guilt and trauma of the incident to this very day, according to the reports.
Oh, baby.
Now, on December 21st, the courts filed charges against the adult perpetrators, going for life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, given that Jyoti had not yet succumbed to her injuries at this point. It's the 21st. She does not die until the 27th.
Oh, so it's not a murder yet. It's just an assault.
It's just an assault.
I feel like this is the second time that's happened.
Yeah. Additionally, that same day, the police force was also reprimanded for not doing its fucking job.
Yes!
Leading to 2 officers being suspended for failing to prevent the attack on December 24th.
Get fucking wrecked, bitches.
Now, Muhammad Afraz was found to be 17 years old and 17 years and 6 months old at the time.
Why you thought you were gonna say 17 years old and 6 months pregnant? I'm sorry. I'm not trying to make you laugh in the middle of this, but I deadass thought that's what you were gonna say. 17 years old and 6 months pregnant, and you know what? I didn't bat an eye at it.
No, because the way this is worded was wild. Hold on. Okay. No, I wrote these and I was like shaking the entire time. I just wanted to get these notes over and done with.
17-year-old was 6 months pregnant.
No. Now, Muhammad Afraz was found to be 17 years and 6 months old at the time of the crime. And because of this, his name was changed to Raju due to the fact that he was, in fact, a minor.
But he didn't act like a minor, did he? Also, I feel like 17 to 18 should not be like an ambiguous line when you're committing murder. Try him like an adult. If you want to behave like an adult, you get tried like an adult. You want to behave like a bitch, you get treated like a bitch.
Now,
bitch.
The courts refused to test to confirm that he was, in fact, the age that he said he was, because like you are able to test to see if you are actually that age or not, instead using paperwork to confirm. On January 28th, 2013, the Juvenile Justice Board ruled that he would not be tried as an adult despite the severity of his crime.
For what reason?
Because he was a minor.
I don't give a shit if he was a minor.
No. He was then tried separately from the other men in a juvenile court, a verdict being announced on August 31st, 2013, after being postponed several times.
He better be dead.
He was convicted of the rape and murder of Jyoti Singh and sentenced to a maximum of 3 years in a reform school, with time served for the 8 months he had already spent in prison.
The one thing that will always drive me crazy is how fucking ridiculous the legal system against a child is. Because I understand that some people are going to be like, oh, but he was like maybe pressured into it. Yeah, I don't give a fuck.
No, I'm going to get angry about this because you have the same people.
3 years?
3 years.
He was
with
given
time served.
3 years.
With time served.
His days are now limited.
So
he better be dead.
Allegedly,
I'm getting angry. Oh my god.
Allegedly, after the verdict was read, one of Jyoti's younger brothers had tried to attack him.
Good.
But he was held back from doing so.
No, let the kid go.
He was released from prison.
Go crazy, go stupid.
He was released from prison on December 20th, 2015, with a check of about $130.
Coming for you.
He is reportedly working as a chef, but his family has completely cut him off for the crime.
It would be terrible if he had a chef-related accident, like an accidentally slipping and stabbing yourself in the head multiple times. That would suck, wouldn't it?
He fell into my knife.
10 times.
He fell into my knife 10 times. He had it coming.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to be deep fried alive? What's his name?
Muhammad.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to be deep fried alive? Would you like to?
Jeez. Now, the 5 adult men were charged with rape, murder, kidnapping, destruction of evidence, and attempted murder on January 3rd, 2013.
Mhm.
Mukesh Singh, Vinay Sharma, Ash K. Therma, and Pawan Gupta all pleaded not guilty despite confessing to the crimes, claiming that the confession had been coerced.
You ever? Okay. Hang on, I had a thought. I had a sentence, and then you said the end of your sentence, and then I went, by who? God? Because
No.
only God would let people do dumb shit like that.
No.
Right?
Unfortunately, they kind of...
You ever seen those videos of the kids and the parents are like, who ate all the sprinkles? And then the kid's like, it wasn't me. And his face is like covered in sprinkles.
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now.
No. To be completely 100% honest, take the American police force, how corrupt they are, times it by 100.
If these men were tortured for their statements, at least they were tortured. At least something good came out of it.
Anyway,
I'm
not
violent.
I'm not pro police, but
I'm not pro police, but I am pro torture in this instance.
Fair enough. Now,
I'm not pro police, but at this point, I don't see anything wrong
with their actions.
With what's happening in this instance.
With those confessions were supposedly coerced. Anyway,
if they were coerced, maybe they were at least coerced with a baseball bat.
Anyway, of course, during this time, while they were gathering evidence and waiting for the trials to come through, Ram Singh passed away under mysterious circumstances.
Which one's that?
That one's the one who was found hanging in his cell.
Oh, damn! I was so excited to just cross off a new one.
No,
yeah,
because
wasn't Jeffrey Epstein also dead under mysterious circumstances?
Yeah.
Oh, I love when history repeats itself.
Oh, well, actually, this was before Epstein.
I love when history repeats itself in the opposite direction.
That's fair. However, one of their lawyers claimed that, quote, the victims were responsible for the assault because they should not have been using public transportation and, as an unmarried couple, they should not have been on the streets at night. He went on to say, quote, until today, I have not seen a single incident or example of rape with a respected lady. Even an underworld don would not like to touch a girl without respect, end quote. He also called the male victim wholly responsible for the incident because he failed in his duty to protect the woman.
What's this lawyer's name?
I couldn't fucking find it.
Maybe that's for the better, because if we had his name, I'd be in his dreams tonight. Yeah, I would be Freddy Krueger. It's me. I'm in your dreams. And I'm currently, and I cannot say this as seriously as I am right now, I am currently pouring cement into your asshole. You better stay anonymous, because the most dangerous thing in the world right now for you is me.
Additionally, on March 13, 2013, police also filed additional charges for the robbery and assault from earlier on in the day on December 16th to add additional charges to what was going on. Because remember, these six...
They said another one.
No, because you remember, these 6 men fully assaulted and robbed a dude before all of this.
You know what sucks? They probably weren't going to do anything about that if this hadn't happened.
Oh, no, for sure. They for sure weren't. Now, due to the...
I hate how similar our stories are.
Yeah. Now, due to the implementation of a fast-track court, which is basically background, in India...
A fast pass?
Fast track. No.
It's the legal fast pass.
In India, there were, a bunch of courts, and, they were, really backed up. And because of this, they decided to implement several fast-track courts. And what they essentially did was try to get things they put high priority cases in these courts to get them going faster.
I don't hate that concept, but then what do you consider to be a high priority? I'd love to know that.
I would too.
I want to look that up.
So, due to the implementation of these fast track courts earlier in the year, the prosecution was able to rest its case against the 4 remaining men on July 8th. On September 10th,
She's dead at this point.
she's been dead since
July. December.
She's been dead.
Okay, so this is the next year.
This is the next year.
Got you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I hate how long legal shit takes.
It's awful. But then again, there are also cases where it takes years and years for anything to happen.
Rot.
On September 10th, 2013, the 4 men were found guilty of rape, murder, unnatural offenses, and the destruction of evidence.
I'm sorry. Rape, murder, unholy, unspeakable deeds, worse than Chuckles the Clown could ever come up with out of his squeaky asshole. What was the last charge?
Destruction of evidence.
Destruction of evidence. Jesus Christ. Sorry. Unholy offenses, I think is it was unholy offenses?
Mm-hmm. No, it was unnatural offenses.
Unnatural offenses.
No, because she was
Oh my God.
because
no, I'm not saying it's a bad sentencing, it's a bad conviction. I'm saying that's the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. I want to sue I have a very specific person I would like to sue for unnatural offenses.
Jesus.
Him too. Actually, his father.
Oh, okay. Well, many actually called for the death penalty, which was hanging at this time.
Good.
Jody's father stated, quote, "We will get complete closure only if all of the accused are wiped off from the face of the earth," end quote.
Yep.
Her father said that, and I was like, yeah.
You know what I think should be a capital punishment? Sending convicts into space and releasing them out of an airlock.
Interesting. I feel like, but that's too much money, though. It's a lot of money.
Sending them out into space, never to return. So they have to die in the emptiness of space. And they have, like, tech equipment on them. Hooking their bodies up to the machine, the spacecraft, and the spacecraft runs off of them. So then they're actively being tortured to fuel the machine to go into space, never to return.
Fair enough.
I watch a lot of horror movies.
I know you do.
I just want Markiplier to release Iron Lung.
I know. Okay. All 4 men immediately launched an appeal, all of which were denied, and on September 13th, 2013, they were all sentenced to death by hanging.
Yes!
Jody's family expressed gratitude to the courts for their work, and crowds across India and the world rejoiced at the news.
Wish y'all could have done this sooner and actually protected her so this wouldn't have fucking happened. But whatever.
When the 4 men heard their verdict, they started to plead with the judge and the men in the crowd, stating, quote, brothers help us.
Bitch, I ain't your brother.
While on death row, Mukesh Singh blamed Jody for being raped, saying, quote, "You can't clap with one hand. It takes 2 hands. A decent girl won't roam around at 9 o'clock at night."
What the fuck does that even mean? Okay, first of all, 9 o'clock at night is not fucking late. Okay, McDonald's is still open, first of all. Second of all, what the fuck does clapping with one hand mean? It takes 2 to tango?
Basically. Now, I'm not done. This quote is still
It takes
ongoing.
2 to commit murder, too.
The quote is still ongoing.
Oh, he's still talking?
A girl is far more responsible for rape than a boy.
What?
Boy and girl are not equal. Housework and housekeeping is for girls, not roaming in discos and bars at night doing wrong things, wearing wrong clothes. About 20% of girls are good, end quote.
Are you trying to make it worse for yourself?
Mukesh also blamed Jody for her death, stating, quote, "When being raped, she shouldn't fight back. She should just be silent and allow the rape. Then they would have dropped her off after, quote, doing her and only hit the boy."
Who said that?
Mukesh,
Who's that?
the bus driver's brother.
They've done this before.
I fully believe they have.
Are they dead? They better be dead.
On March 13th, 2014, the Delhi High Court, after the 4 appealed to the higher courts, upheld both the convictions and the sentencing, saying that the crimes these men committed fell into the rarest of rare category.
Good.
Those 4 immediately then appealed to the Indian Supreme Court.
Oh my God. No one cares about your fucking lives.
While the 4 were granted stays of execution as they worked on their appeals, they were convicted of the robbery and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment on August 27, 2015.
These men better not be alive anymore.
Now, government authorities and the victim's mother alleged that the 4 convicts were intentionally delaying and frustrating the legal process in this case by filing their pleas in stages so that way the execution could be postponed. Now, under the prison rules, if any one particular case results in more than one death penalty conviction, as with this case, and any one of those convicted in the case petitions for a mercy plea, the execution dates of all others convicted must be postponed until a decision is made on that pending mercy plea.
So are they appealing for each person at a time?
Yes. If one fails, they're going through another one. If
you can push death back. But luckily for you, that's not how that works all the time, because death has a backup plan, and it's me.
Now, finally, on March 4th, 2020, after dealing with years and years of mercy pleas and appeals, the execution date was set for March 20th, 2020 at 5:30 a.m.
Yes.
Now, on
what day?
March 20th, 2020.
Oh, yes.
On March 20th, 2020 at 5:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time, Mukesh Singh, Vinay Sharma, Akshay Thakur, and Pawan Gupta were executed at Tihar jail.
Yes!
They were hanged. They were hanged on gallows specifically designed for 4 people. According to prison officials, the 4 convicts refused the offers of a last meal and new clothes prior to the execution.
Die on an empty stomach.
They were blindfolded and did not resist as they were led to the gallows. However, Vinay Sharma actually suffered a breakdown prior to his execution and began to plead with the guards.
Good. Beg.
The 4 convicts were pronounced dead after hanging for 30 minutes.
Yes.
And allegedly, Mukesh Singh requested to donate his organs.
No. We don't want that evil anywhere else in the world. Oh, I'm so glad they're dead. Except for that kid. Nothing happened.
She was murdered December of 2012.
Oh my God, it took
about
8 years?
8 years.
8 fucking years.
That's how they purposely planned it, to make it last as long as possible, just on the off chance they could get a retrial or...
What's it like to watch the entire country not care about you over and over and over again for 8 years? I am so glad that they got to watch the government consistently deny them and then keep thinking that somewhere in the world someone is going to be as terrible as them, and it never fucking worked. I'm so glad that they were consistently let down by the fact that no one gives a shit about them. That is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Now,
fuck them kids.
We're going back in time again.
Okay.
Back to 2012.
Okay.
Now, public protests actually erupted across the world on December 21st, 2012.
Good.
Once the news outlets started picking up on Jyoti's attack. And they only got worse after Jyoti passed from her injuries.
Oh, yeah. She's a martyr at this point.
Yeah. They ranged from marches to hunger strikes, with information being spread across WhatsApp and Facebook groups.
Good.
Petitions were filed for stricter laws that protected women.
Good.
During this time, it was discovered that New Delhi had the highest number of sex crimes among India's major cities.
Mm-hmm.
Police figures show a rape reported on average every 18 hours, while reported rape cases rose by nearly 17% between 2007 and 2011.
Every 8 hours? 18 hours?
18 hours.
Holy shit.
And only one of the 706 rape cases filed in Delhi in 2012 saw a successful conviction against the attacker.
And I'm sure it was the bare fucking minimum.
Between the 16th of December and the 4th of January, 501 calls for harassment and 64 calls for rape were recorded by the Delhi police, but only 4 were followed up by inquiries.
Why even record them at this point if you're not going to do anything about them? If you're going to ignore them, at least be smart enough to get rid of the fucking evidence, but you're making it obvious that you don't care.
The regional program director for the UN Women South Asian said, quote, there are rape cases in almost all cities and rural areas where the victim dies immediately because of the brutality of the crime. This time it was like, wake up. Many, many, many people called for the torture and the castration of the 6 men.
Me too. Right now.
Now,
Where are their bodies?
I don't know. I didn't care
See
to
how
look.
they like it. I'm qualified to do that now.
Now.
They better pray that I never dig up their bones because, ooh, I think culturally they're cremated, but they better pray that I never dig up their bones because if I get a hold of those bones, oh, it's over.
Now,
I'll send them to the worst place in the world,
here are
the British Museum.
Yep. Jeez.
Sorry.
And in the aftermath of this attack, a lot of things did change.
Good.
The government of Karnataka actually announced the launch of a 24/7 dedicated helpline to be operated by state police to register sexual abuse complaints from women. It's also checking the possibility of setting up fast-track courts to dispose of the pending cases pertaining to crimes against women.
Good.
The government of Tamil Nadu also announced a 13-point action plan to ensure the safety of women in Tamil Nadu and said that incidents of sexual assault would be treated as a grave crime and probes that would be entrusted to top police officials. The Tamil Nadu chief minister also said that daily hearings would be conducted in all sexual abuse cases in the state for speedy trials at specifically constituted fast-track courts, and women prosecutors would be appointed as government counsels. The Jammu and Kashmir governments also announced plans to change the state's laws against sexual offenses and gender crimes. The government of Himachal Pradesh decided to set up state and district level committees to review progress of all cases against women. Now, on December 22nd, 2015, Raya Sabha passed the revised Juvenile Justice Act, which proposed that the accused of
Those accused.
Yes. Which proposed that those accused of heinous crimes who are above 16 years of age will be treated as an adult in the court of law.
Good.
Following the incident, the government set up the Nirbhaya Fund for Empowerment, Safety, and Security of Women and Girl Children. The fund is administered by the Department of Economic Affairs of the Finance Ministry. However, an Oxfam India report published in 2021 shows that the fund remains underused and underutilized.
Fuck that.
Now, Nirbhaya Chetna Diwas, a public event organized by women's and citizens groups, candlelight vigils and prayer meetings, and other events held on December 16th, 2015 at the Jantar Mantar to pay homage to Jyoti on the 3rd anniversary of her death, or her attack. In what was called a brave homage to her daughter, Jyoti's mother, Asha Devi, said, "My daughter's name was Jyoti Singh, and I am not ashamed to name her. Those who commit heinous crimes like rape, their heads should hang in shame, not the victims or their families." End quote. Devi spoke out against the upcoming release of the juvenile and put forth 4 demands for justice. Quote, on the 3rd death anniversary of our death, we are seeing the release of the juvenile convict. Where is the justice in that? I do not know whether he is 16 or 18. I only know that he has committed a brutal crime and there should be no age limit for punishment. The juvenile convict should be sentenced to death, and fast-track courts should be set up in all courts to offer speedy justice to sexual assault victims. Amendments to the Juveniles Justice Act be passed, and the utilization of the Nirbhaya Fund for setting up high-quality forensic labs in all states. End quote. And that is the case of Jyoti Singh, India's daughter.
Good for them that they're dead. Because if they were alive, ooh boy, they'd be in for a world of pain. They got out the easy way. How you doing?
Not great.
You know, I'd say thanks for that, but no thank you. That was actually the worst thing you've ever said to me.
Is it worse than the Mexican case I did, the baby killer case?
Ooh, yes. No. I think that will actually forever be the worst thing you've ever said to me. I am going to be so honest. I don't know what to say to that. I really don't. That is I mean, I kind of voiced my opinion as we went, so I feel like everyone kind of knows where I stand on that. But I hated that. I really did. The part about the intestines, man, that fucks me up. Didn't like that at all.
Nope. Yeah. This was the one that like I kept having to take like several breaks in writing my notes. And I whenever I brought it up to Mythos that I was having issues with this, like writing these case notes, and I really like genuinely I wanted to not write these notes. I was so uncomfortable and so violently disturbed by what I was reading and what I was hearing and all of it. I couldn't I really wanted just to take a step back and be like, maybe not this one. But we don't have the luxury to say no when it comes to things like this. People don't have the luxury to decide how they die. People don't have the luxury to decide what happens to them. So for people to decide whether or not they're too uncomfy or too like icked out to say something because it doesn't fit with what they think true crime should be. It it just kind of struck a chord with me. Like maybe I am uncomfortable with this. I also have trauma with repeated sexual assault, but this isn't about me. And
I'm honest to God surprised you remembered me saying that.
these cases aren't about how we feel about them. They're about the stories that are being told because I mean, I had no idea this case was even a thing until I had to look outside of the US, and even then it took several pages of scrolling just to find something. And then whenever I found this, there's like all this information out there. If you look, it's not stuff that you would typically see in cases from the US. There's no like I'm gonna say this because I've been watching a show on Discovery Plus. Just because there aren't any like sordid details or anything to make it juicy or anything like that, that means that like a lot of people aren't gonna tune in, or not a lot of people aren't gonna be like, oh well, there's nothing interesting about this. And if you're into true crime because of whether or not something's interesting or fascinating, I feel like you're in it for the wrong reasons. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. If you only listen to true crime because you're fascinated and disgusted by the details, then you're listening for the wrong reason. Personally, the point is not to be obsessed with how gruesome it was. The point is to acknowledge that these are people's stories. There's no awareness to knowing that these things happened and to understanding how the world works in other ways. And the level of fascination that people have with, I'm going to say something a little controversial here. The level of fascination that people have with true crime and how gruesome things can be and wanting to look up the morbid, juicy details of it is why things like what's happening in Gaza can happen. And instead of wanting to help people, they're just fascinated in looking at the photos of babies missing heads.
I mean, it's not even that. Like people brag about being desensitized to this kind of stuff all the time, and
You
it's
shouldn't be
no,
desensitized.
you shouldn't be. Like there are every single case I have done, I have carried with me in some way, shape, or form. There are times where I will be looking into something and I'll be like, oh, and then I'll have to take a break because it is getting to be almost too much. But we don't, at least me, as somebody who is deciding to give their time to tell these people's stories, we don't get to decide when enough's enough. We don't get to decide when we've had enough of these people's stories because they never got the chance to decide that they had enough of what was happening to them. They never had the opportunity to tap out of reality and be like, I'm done, no more.
We do this podcast because we are the mouthpiece for these stories, not because we are the judge and executioner of when these stories are too much. If you are uncomfortable by the details, then you are experiencing a fraction of what these people went through. A
Exactly.
fraction. A almost like Earth compared to the size of the universe level of discomfort. And if that is too much for you, then maybe you should start contributing to helping instead of just being like, I can't do this. And I understand that some people genuinely can't. That's fine. There are times when I literally can't. But if I have the ability to tell someone's story, I will. But if you're going out of your way to be invested in true crime and seek out these details and you're not helping, why are you here?
Because this isn't a competition to be like, oh, well, I fall asleep to this type of case, and, oh, I've fallen asleep to this before, and it's not.
You're falling asleep to the stories of people's lives being taken from them gruesomely, to these people's sufferings. It's horrific, I think, the way that people describe, oh, well, I have to listen to, and if it's fictional, that's one thing. But if you're listening to true crime, the concept of true crime being true crime, true things that have happened in a criminal sense. If you are listening to these details and you're sitting here going, "Oh, I can just fall asleep to this." You're being lulled to sleep by the sound of someone being murdered. You are being lulled to sleep by the sound of someone's life ending, their kids being murdered in front of them being assaulted and left for dead. That is disgusting. We don't fall asleep to true crime. We fall asleep to rain and piano sounds.
Because I have anxiety and PTSD.
And we are probably 90% of the views on that fucking video.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I partake in horror, but the horror that I partake in is not. I do a lot of like online analog style horror. And there's a difference in that, where the horror, I don't like the murder aspect of it. I like the supernatural aspects of it. Shocker, my fucking personality. But deciding, oh, I don't want to listen to this case because it doesn't sound interesting to me, or doesn't sound whatever, or, oh, it took place in another country, I don't give a shit. First of all, that's racist. But second of all, why? Why what could possibly qualify someone's death as not interesting enough? First of all, but also their life. You don't know these people. Like whenever Stephanie Sue puts out a new video, I watch it even if I'm uncomfortable, because first of all, I love her. But second of all, I want to know these stories. It's uncomfortable and it sucks and it hurts, but she does a lot of international stories. And that's important to know. Things are different in other places. And I think that's important. We're not going to be able to sympathize with each other if we don't know what other people's been through. And the best way to know that, unfortunately, is by true crime, the stories that are being told. So,
Like, that's the weird thing. Like, I listened to another podcast, and I just caught up to their 300th episode, and there's like, people, they talked about like how in the beginning, like, oh my gosh, are you even gonna make it to like 200 or 300? And they're like, oh yeah, there's so many cases, and they're still going, just because the sheer amount of shit that people put each other through.
mm-hmm.
It is so ridiculous, honestly, that this is even a genre. And because I look at it and I see that there are true crime podcast conventions. There's like true crime chat rooms where they don't even talk about they don't talk about the cases. They don't talk about what happened. They talk about like how cute Ted Bundy was, or how they wish
I hate those bitches.
Jeffrey Dahmer could eat them. First of all,
Ew.
no. Shut the fuck up.
I was just thinking the same thing. I'm so sorry. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was like, the people that made merch out of serial killers.
People who make merch from serial killers and horrific things that happened in history are the worst kind of people.
I think if I knew someone who was serial killed and someone made merch of that serial killer, I would then become a serial killer.
Jeez. Like, no, because like people like
I'd be the Etsy shop serial killer.
Jeez.
Do it. Because they all sell their whatever.
Yeah, no.
Whatever.
No, because here's the thing.
Violent.
I am getting violent too, but like I see constantly on social media that there is no ethical way of doing true crime, because depending on who does it, there's always going to be somebody getting hurt.
Yeah.
And I am trying to be one of those people who try to do it as ethically as I possibly can. I'm never going to jump on and be like, "Oh, whoa, you spooky ghosties, you. Today we're going to talk about this super horrific murder I saw on TikTok." Like, no. I do know people like that in the true crime sphere. Do I know them personally? No.
I don't plan to.
I don't ever plan to. But like, I'm also never going to have like a 5-minute therapy ad for that one app that's like run by Zionists. Sorry about it.
These are people's loved ones. These are people who will see what you're saying, and these are other people, other humans who have been murdered or tormented or hurt in any way. And that's not cute.
It's not quirky. It's
It's
not.
not girly pop. It's sad. It's heartbreaking. It's upsetting.
And
And to approach it as anything less than that is not only disrespectful to the people that it happened to, it's disrespectful to their family members. It's disrespectful to everyone who was impacted by the case. And also, it's disrespectful to you to belittle your humanity to that point.
And of course, we're going to end up talking about cases where the victim isn't what we like to call a perfect victim. They're going to be victims where they were abusers, they were horrible, horrible people, but that does not mean that we can't share that these horrible, horrible things don't also happen to people like that. The tragedy of murder and rape and all of these crimes is that there's no screening. You don't have to light up a room in order to be considered a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing.
And you don't have to be a pillar of the community to be a serial killer.
Exactly. There are several pillars of the community that are victims, and there are several people who light up rooms that are killers and horrible, horrible people. And the idea that you have, like,
There is no stereotypical victim, and there is no stereotypical killer. That's just not a thing. That's not a.
and the fact that that's even a
Life is not a fan fiction. Life is not book talk. Life is hard and it's gruesome and it's not fun. But we're not here to have fun. We're here to learn. We're here to understand what other people have been through, big and small.
yeah. So all that just to say, get out of your comfort zone. I am desperately begging people to get out of their comfort zone when it comes to these things, because the second you start feeling comfortable in a space like this, a true
Something's
crime
wrong.
space, there is something very, very wrong. If you start going back to the same cases over and over again because they feel familiar enough to you that you don't feel comfortable clicking on anything else, click on something else. You are surrounding yourself and you are actively putting yourself in a position where you are only exploring other things through the lens of one case. And while being not necessarily an expert, but being aware of a case and understanding what happened in that case is great, but you have to have other things to compare it to. You cannot let yourself get caught up in one case or one serial killer. And please, for the love of God, don't focus on the serial killers. 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, a lot of the information that's out there is just the serial killers, and that's why there's so many people. And I've been guilty of this too, like the Adolfo Constanzo case. I focused heavily on him. I could have focused more on Mark Kilroy. However, the reason why I didn't do that is because if you focus on Mark Kilroy,
You miss out on most of the victims.
you miss out on most of the victims, and the only way that we would know about those victims is through Adolfo Constanzo himself, through his journals and everything that he left behind.
And that's also why we did it in a 5-part fucking series. And if it takes us 2 hours to get into the details of something, we're going to take 2 hours to get into the details of something. Now, thankfully, I can kind of get a pass on that because I don't tend to talk about things that have that many details in that sense. But Psychos does, like, you basically, this is your full-time job. My right shoulder, by the way, is fucked up.
Oh, baby.
This is your full-time job, essentially. Like, Psychos is already, like, 3 episodes ahead of me on research, and they spend 9 times out of 10, if I come home, they're listening to an audiobook, they're doing research or something. Like, they spend a lot of time digging into these cases, and we're gonna miss details. But, like, I haven't listened to another podcast. I used to listen to podcasts. I haven't listened to another podcast since then, since we started this, because I got so frustrated with, what do you mean you only talked about this case for 30 minutes? What do you mean it only took you 2 days of research to get this done?
I got so frustrated. I'm not
You
gonna.
mentioned this while I was, like, doing the dishes today, and I literally went, how the fuck?
No, I love this podcast. I really do, because this was the first podcast that I ever got into that kind of introduced me to the world of true crime. I'm not gonna name names, because if you do listen to it, I don't want my opinions to like influence you or whatever. But then again, you are a human being, and humans aren't necessarily swayed from their opinions very often.
We are very judgmental people, but it's what we use to survive.
Yeah. But they mentioned that they had to keep pushing back recording on an episode because it took somebody 3 days to write their notes. Whenever it's usually done within like a day or so. And I'm like sitting here like I have legitimately taken weeks to write a set of notes. Like my Jyoti Singh notes. Those took me a week and a half to write, and there was so much information that I left out because I wasn't sure how to fit them into the proper timeline.
Yeah.
Because the timeline
My
had gotten so confusing to myself, I had no idea how I was going to be able to present it in a way that would make sense to other people.
mhm.
And I really want to do a follow-up episode one day where I just sit down and I like fully go through like all the legal shit that was going on during the trials, during like all the different laws and things that I did leave out because I just couldn't figure out how to phrase it and implement it in a way that would make sense to people. Like I had like there are so many things that I did admittedly leave out and I feel awful about it, but because I feel like I got the majority of Jody's story out there, I don't feel as bad. I will come back at a later date to go through step by step all of the legal processes, step by step all of the laws that were actually brought into everything that was because of her, because she changed so many things, but at the same time she didn't change hardly anything at all. And that's the tragic heartbreaking thing. Like I can go through and I can be like, these are the things that were supposedly implemented, but as we saw with the fund, was underutilized. Thing Unfortunately, things like these laws that were introduced because of a tragedy often don't get used unless somebody brings eyes to them. If somebody doesn't point out like, "Hey, this was supposed to be used for this. Why isn't it being used? What's going on?" Sorry, I went off on a
No,
tangent.
you're good. So just to give you guys an idea of kind of how this works on our end. So I'm just looking at my notes right now. So the most cases, at least for me, depending on the research, depending on the story that I'm doing, the shortest amount of time that I've done research in, I think might have been there's a couple episodes that took me about 2 days to do. And those were very obviously short ones. My this case that I'm doing today, I did in about two days, yesterday and today. Um or maybe 3 days. And then the Benia, I did that in about 2 days. Amityville took me what, like 2 weeks
Yeah.
minimum. Goth Culture took me like a month. The Kaiju, the World War II story, the Nagasaki and Hiroshima story, that took me about a month. The Romanovs family took me what, like 4 months, something like that. I started doing research back in November for that. Um, the Seshoseki took me, I want to say 2 weeks. And this isn't like here and there. Like I would sit down for like hours a day. My Loki research I took a while, but also you have to consider with these, like we're not just sitting down and like reading the wiki page. Like I go to the wiki page to get a basic idea of what's going on, but for my Romanov story, I bought 4 books. I listened to about 6 of them. La Llorona, I had to watch a shit ton of videos for English and in Spanish. My Book of the Dead episode, I had to buy the book for my Seshoseki. I had to read a lot of articles and look up a lot of shit on that. The Jola people, that took me a lot longer than I expected. I had to watch a lot of videos on that. There wasn't a lot of books though, which unfortunate. But like
Yeah.
we literally have a bookcase dedicated just to the books we use for research. We're doing audiobooks, we're doing documentaries, I'm watching videos, I'm looking up not just wiki, but where wiki sources are coming from, or, random blogs that might have little bits of information that I can look up. Like we're looking up a lot of stuff when we do these episodes. So our notes don't just take us 3 days, and it's not just, we don't have a team of researchers. We're putting in the time and effort to go through this. Like just looking up the fact checking of the weather system for Amityville took me at least 2 hours to find the website to be able to look that up, and I had to verify multiple different sources to say that I could pinpoint this area. Even
Yeah.
in that story, the Native American land that sits on was not listed online. I had to go hunt for that. I had to go look on it, looked it up, looked up the history of it, found the other tribe that was actually supposed to be on that land. That alone took me an entire day. I literally was sitting at work with you, remember?
Mhm.
Watching videos on that, telling you about the drama of that one guy who claimed to be a chief and wasn't. That took me an entire day, just verifying the first 30 seconds of that episode where I was saying this belongs to this people.
We really do put a lot of time and effort into these, and I hold myself to a really really high standard when it comes to stuff like this. I do honestly, I try so hard.
You do great, babe.
And
you really do.
whenever I am disappointed with myself and how the research comes out, you can kind of tell. Like, for instance, my Amityville notes, I felt awful
You were
about
so
those.
upset about those. I could tell you did not want to be there.
I knew the information, and I just didn't feel like my notes were up to par. And
It's because you script yours verbatim and you did it like I do, where you just did it like
I can't. I have anxiety. I have to script mine.
I can't script mine. I'll blow my brains out.
I have really bad anxiety. I really need to know what I'm gonna say, like how I'm gonna say it.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so are you ready for your case?
Yes, I'm ready for my case.
What you telling us about today?
Today I am talking about dun 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 the woman who named her own murderer.
Hold on, is this a true crime thing? Because I thought we agreed that that's my thing.
Yes, it is a true crime thing, but it's also a paranormal thing.
Oh,
You kind of know what I'm talking about, right?
kind of.
Kind of.
I don't remember, if I'm honest.
Today we are talking about Teresita Basa, who named her own killer post-mortem.
Nani?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we don't know a lot about Teresita. She was born in 1929, same year as my grandfather. She was born in the Philippines.
We're not doing the thing that another podcast does where we where we like tie every event into
back to when my grandfather was alive.
Yeah, no, we're not
and
doing
he
that.
just happened to be born the same year.
Okay.
So, born in 1929 in the Philippines, Teresita, at a very young age, is said to have had a very strong passion for music. Now, we don't know a lot about her when she was younger, so just bear with me. She was a sweet girl. Her family loved her. She, at a very young age, began to learn the piano, and she practiced day in and day out. Couldn't be me. Literally did not want to practice my violin at all. She was so passionate about it that she wanted to get a job in music, but unfortunately, there were not a lot of opportunities in the Philippines for music. Either the market was just super saturated, or it just wasn't a huge priority for the country, so there wasn't a lot of job opportunities there. So in her 30s, she actually moved to the United States in like the 1960s-ish. Now, here she moved to Chicago, Illinois, which is a choice. Love you, Chicago. And she went to university and got a degree in music. Now, I'm going to assume that she got a master's degree in music. So she's working her ass off. But unfortunately, in Chicago in the 60s, for some fucking reason, a Filipino woman was also having issues again trying to find a job in music. So she ended up getting some work at a local hospital called.
Oh, I love that hospital. They treat me good.
Oh my God, I hate you. Edgewater Hospital. Now, at this hospital, she would work for a very long time up until her death. She worked her way up and became a respiratory therapist. Now, her patients noted that she was very passionate, she was very sweet, and she literally had no enemies. While she was going to the hospital and working there, she was also beginning to do PhD work in music, and she would also give free piano lessons out of her apartment as well, though I could not confirm this source. She loves music. She's a respiratory nurse. She's a sweetheart. We love her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 1977. She is 48 years old?
48.
At about 9 p.m., Chicago Fire responds to a call from neighbors about a fire in the upper apartment building. I'm not going to... some people named the street. I'm not doing that. So...
Why not?
Because other people live there. Now, the fire department responded to the call. They got there about 9 o'clock at night, and or a little bit after 9 o'clock at night, and they had to break the door down. They could not immediately get in. Now, when they got in, they discovered that the apartment appeared to be completely empty, but there was a mattress in the middle of the living room that was set on fire.
Okay.
So they made work of putting the fire out, and when they finally put the fire out and started investigating the supposed arson that they just walked into, they discovered that there was actually a body beneath the mattress. So they they pick up the mattress and they turn it over, and underneath is laying a naked woman, and she has a butcher knife embedded in her chest.
Jesus Christ.
She's dead, by the way.
Okay, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. How? Okay.
She's been burned.
Okay, so, like, did they not notice her body before they
She
lifted
was
the mattress?
smaller than the mattress.
But even if you put a mattress on somebody, there is going to be, like, a mound or
So
something.
I'll get to it.
Okay.
So, given the evidence that was at the scene, her apartment was completely ransacked. So they assumed that it was a robbery, and then she was also completely naked, so they assumed that she was a rape robbery. Whatever, gone wrong. This is what happened that night. So, obviously we know at this point it was Teresita. So here's what happened that night. At about 7:30, she had just gotten home from a shift at work. She had a 20-minute phone call with a friend of hers said to be named Ruth. I'm not going to include her last name. Now, during this phone call, they were just casually talking about their day, and at the end of the phone call, Teresita mentioned that she was expecting a visit from a man and that she had to go. At 8:40 p.m., neighbors report the smelling of smoke to the janitor of the apartment building. The call is not made until 9 o'clock. So the fire had been burning for about 20 minutes, at least when it started to get to people. So that's how. They literally had, everything was charred. So the mattress was probably destroyed at this point. So they didn't realize there was a person underneath. So that's how they
Okay,
didn't.
I also have a question.
Yes.
The general assumption at this point, though, is that it's a
Robbery. It's a break-in, robbery, assault.
Yeah. Was anything actually taken from the home?
They couldn't tell. So the apartment had been ransacked, but it didn't look like anything major had been taken. Like, no, her TV was still there, stuff like that.
So it wasn't like
There was also no evidence of forced entry.
Yeah, so like it totally like it was definitely covered up to make it look like a robbery then.
You must be fun at parties.
I am. I'm brilliant at parties. That's why I don't get invited to them.
You said the same thing to me last night. We were watching Bungo Stray Dogs, and I like completely predicted like the entire episode's plot. And Psychos turns to me and goes, "You must be fun at parties."
No, because here's the thing.
I hate Bungo Stray Dogs.
Do you really?
No.
Okay. Because like
I'm watching it solely because I like the ginger-haired guy with the
would.
ponytail.
You would.
Oh, fuck you.
Anyway, so no.
You don't like Dazai, so meh.
Well, it's because I'm not suicidal.
I don't like it when you lie.
You're ugly when you lied. I'm not lying.
Then why are you ugly?
Anyway, no, going back to my original thing. I am great at parties, which is why they don't invite me because they know I'd steal the spotlight.
No, they would turn to you and be like, "Hey, Psychos, what you thinking about?" And you'd be like, "The Titanic."
What you thinking about?
Jonestown.
Oh God. What you thinking about?
That photo of Jim Jones with his skin peeling off.
Okay, to be fair,
I had to see it.
I did too. To be fair,
I didn't want to.
it's like burned into like my eye. Like any of the crime scene photos I see when like I do my research, they're like burned into my memory. And if you think
No, I trauma forget them.
if you think that I willingly want to remember these, you're mistaken.
Okay, so yeah, valuables in her home were still there, but the place was genuinely so destroyed that they really honestly couldn't fucking tell. Things had been taken from the apartment, but they just weren't able to tell. Which, like, if a minimalist's house was broken into.
Oh God. What is up with you and your like quest against minimalism?
I'm a maximalist.
I mean, I am too, but like,
if you broke into a minimalist's home, would they think it was robbed or not? Like if they didn't have a TV? No, don't take my one beige T-shirt.
That's fucked up.
I hate minimalists.
What
Anyway,
did they do to you? So what did they ever do to you?
I'm the poor maximalist. That's just what I am. So immediately after putting out the fire, they began investigating. Now, unfortunately, the fire itself had actually gotten rid of most of the evidence. However, there was one piece of evidence, literally only one piece of evidence that they had. And it was a note that was written on the side table saying, "Get theater tickets for A.S."
Okay.
Because they had no leads, the case went cold. None.
Damn it.
5.5 months later,
Jesus
July of 1977, the lead detective, Joe Statula,
That's a name.
gets a call from Evanston police who say they had spoken with a doctor named Jose, and he claimed to have new information about the murder. He also claimed that this information came from Teresita herself. Now, important thing to know, the doctor and his wife that I'm about to mention are both Filipino.
Okay.
Now, his wife, Remy, had actually worked at the same hospital with Teresita. They were actually coworkers and good friends. So she knew her personally. Now, Joe Joe goes to the house and he sits down and he starts talking to the couple and he's like, "What do you have?" And the husband's like, "Well, you're not going to believe me, but here's what we have." Remy begins to tell the detective about a situation that happened a while ago where she had gone to bed one night because she was just fatigued, she was exhausted. You know how it is. She goes to bed and then Jose is like she was asleep and then she started talking in her sleep in their native language from the Philippines. I don't know where they're from in the Philippines. I don't know what their native language is. There's like 50 million different languages and dialects. So she says in her sleep, "Help me," in a voice he does not recognize. He goes, "Who the fuck are you?" basically. And she goes, "Teresita Basa. Go to the police. They cannot find my killer. Tell them his name is Alan Showery."
Ooh, AS.
Now, Jose at this time knows that a murder did happen, but he's never heard of the name Teresita before. He never heard of her. His wife probably didn't talk about it. She's probably too upset about it. Or maybe he kind of knew the name, but he didn't know where it came from.
Okay.
So he's never heard of this woman before. To him, he does not recognize this voice at all. So after this, his wife wakes up and she has no memory of this conversation taking place. Remy goes on to tell the detective that also one night, long ass time ago, before this had happened, she had gone to the hospital lounge to take a nap during her shift, which is not that uncommon, especially if you're working overnights. While she was in the hospital lounge taking a nap, she felt a presence enter the room. And when she opened her eyes, she saw Teresita there staring at her. After this, she began to dream about Teresita, and then shortly afterwards, she began to be possessed by Teresita, and this is when that encounter with her husband would occur. A week after that first encounter happened, she would come back and possess Remy again. And she would be like, "Dude, Jose, why the fuck didn't you go to the police?" She didn't say that, but
¿Dónde está?
"Donde está my shit?" Literally. But she's like mad. She's like, why have you not gone to the police? And Jose's like, "With what evidence? I have no proof. I can't just go in and accuse this guy." And she's like, "Oh, you want proof? I have proof. He took my jewelry after he killed me and he gave it to his girlfriend.
Oh, shit.
Not only that, here's the name and phone numbers of 4 of my family members who will be able to positively identify my jewelry on her."
This ghost is doing the most. Like, she is.
So he goes, "Okay." So then they go to the police. The police call Joe, and Joe comes in and hears all this, and he literally says, "How the fuck do I officially write this down? How do I professionally say a ghost told me this?"
He's just like, I am not paid enough for this.
No, literally. After this, the police are like, I mean, it's a lead, so they take it seriously. So they go start asking the coworkers in the hospital if she was expecting anyone that night. Who was it? And a few people, the coworkers of Alan, do mention that he was supposed to go to her house that night. Now, Alan Showery, he's actually an orderly that works at the hospital. Now, orderly, depending on where you're from, you might not know what that means, but it basically is like an assistant. He's just kind of there to help make their lives easier as nurses. He's not a technician in a sense. He's there and he just like makes their life easier. He gets meds, he like cleans up, like stuff like that. He's just an orderly. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was supposed to go to her house that night, and a lot of coworkers confirmed, yes, this is true. He mentioned, or someone mentioned, that this is going to be happening tonight. This was common knowledge. They go to his house and question him, and they're like, "Hey, buddy, what were you doing that night?" And he's like, "Oh, I was at home with my girlfriend. See, she's right here. This is my girlfriend. I was at home with her. Right, sweetie?" "Yeah, of course, babe. You were at home with me." Do you like my
I
impression?
love your impressions. God.
Thank you. He's like, I was here. I was literally here. And the police are like, "Likely story. Do you want to come down to the station and give us an official statement?" "Sure." So he goes,
First mistake.
so he goes down to the fucking station to make a statement, right? And the police are like, "Hey, so we have information from people that like knew you that said that you were in fact supposed to go to her house that night. Did you go to her house?" And he goes, "Oh my gosh, you know what? You're right. I actually was supposed to go to her house that night, and I did go to her house that night. I was supposed to go because her TV was broken and I had to fix her TV. Now, he says that when he got there, he actually didn't have the right tools to fix the TV, so he was going to go home. Now, I've heard a couple different versions of this. I'm going to tell you all the versions. Either he said he was going to go home to get the right tools and then come back,
Likely story.
or he says that he didn't have the right tools, so he left. I've also heard that he wasn't able to fix the TV at all, so he left. So in any capacity, it sounds like he went there and left, and there's one version where he was supposed to go back. So he says that he went home because he also had to deal with an electrical issue that his girlfriend and him were having at their apartment.
Of course.
Which is a really weird thing to say, by the way.
Sorry, I was having electrical issues. That's why I totally didn't kill this person.
No, literally. So,
also, side note, never talk to the police without a lawyer. I do not give a shit if it makes you look more guilty. Don't talk to the police without a lawyer.
Exactly. If you notice my voice getting worse, it's because I'm sneezing so much and getting sick and Zykos is cutting it out. So, they bring in Alan's girlfriend and they're like, hey, so what the fuck happened that night? And she goes, well, I don't know what he told you, but we weren't having an electrical issue that night. But he did leave to go to her place. And the police are like, oh, okay, cool. That's a cute necklace. Where'd you get it? And she's like, oh, yeah, he gave it to me.
How long ago?
How long ago? Oh, he's been giving me jewelry since February.
Oh,
interesting. So her statement completely contradicts his statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the police then contact and bring in the 4 people that Jose's told them to contact. And the girlfriend is told to bring in her jewelry for positive identification. And they're able to identify all of the jewelry that she would have been wearing that night that she had. They identified all of her pieces. The girlfriend had them. So this implicated him for the murder. So they go to Alan and they're like, hey, so your girlfriend has the jewelry from this dead girl. And it's not like random pieces of jewelry. Like, I'm assuming these are like very important pieces of jewelry to her. Probably. So, things that those family members might have gotten her, things that she wore all the time that are very unique. Like, I wear a very unique necklace. If I were to die and you saw that necklace on someone else, the odds of someone else having that exact necklace is almost impossible. There's another necklace I had that you literally custom made.
Yeah.
So there's no way that you would not know that. I wear a lot of very specific handmade stuff, even just like candy beads for my friends that like no one else is gonna have this fucking bracelet. So he's like, the police are like, hey, your girlfriend is wearing the jewelry. Do you want to explain that? And he goes, I confess.
That's so fucking. I'm sorry. He was like, he could have run with it. He could have been like, oh yeah, I bought these pieces here. No, I don't have the receipts, but yeah, I totally got them. He could have kept going with it, but he was like immediately like, that's it, I'm done.
So according to him, this is what happened that night. So he did go to her house. Now, again, this is where I get the conflicting stories. So one of 2 things either happened. Either 1, he went to her house with the intention of robbing her and killing her. Or 2, he went to her house, tried to fix the TV, realized he didn't have the tools, went back to his house to go get the correct tools, and on the way back to her house, plotted to rob and kill her. One of those 2 things happened. So either he went there the first time planning to kill her, or he left and then came back a second time planning to kill her. One of those 2 things happened. So he goes to her house, right? Mm-hmm. She lets him in. And as she turns to lock the door, he grabs her from behind, puts her in a chokehold, and strangles her to death.
You know how hard it is to strangle somebody to death, right?
Exactly.
It's like
it's hard. You gotta hold someone for like 10 minutes, something crazy.
It's like 5 to 7 minutes, and it's a long time because people are like, oh, it's only gonna take a couple minutes. No, that's when
you knock someone out.
That's when you lose consciousness. That's not when you actually kill somebody. And like the act of actively strangling somebody it's such an intimate way.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting, but it's so intimate.
Not that I've done it before. I said that like I've been there.
Oh, jeez. But like it's such an intimate way to kill somebody.
Yeah. But also, and I remember before we started recording, I mentioned that this drives me crazy. The butcher knife is never mentioned in his statement. He never mentions putting the knife in her, stabbing her to death, whatever. It's just he strangled her, she's dead. Like I don't know where the fucking knife come from. So I don't know if she died by the knife wound or she died from being strangled to death. Okay, and then he did the knife afterwards. I don't know.
Okay, so then alternate theory. Mm-hmm. Alternate theory. He shows up, realizes he doesn't have to tools, goes back home. Somebody else in the meantime comes in, kills her.
No, he did it.
Are we positive?
Yes, her house was locked, and there was no forced entry. She let him in.
Okay.
And also, most sources say that he committed the murder the first time he went to the apartment. There's only one place that mentioned that he had done it the second time he came back, and most places say the first time. Oh, by the way, I don't know why I didn't mention at the top of the episode. All of this story, all these notes, by the way, the main initial notes that I'm referencing this from are actually from my friend Milo.
Yeah, he was a rock star and decided.
I literally texted him and I was like, Milo, I don't know what to talk about the podcast. Do you have any special interests? And he said, I'm so glad you asked. Here's my entire Google Doc of information that I researched into this. So, Milo, if you're listening to this, I love you so fucking much. Thank you. This episode is gladly dedicated to my section is gladly dedicated to Milo, who's a fucking amazing person. Okay. I don't know where the knife comes from. Either he strangled her and then put the knife in her chest to make it seem like it was a different type of murder, because she only had the one stab wound to the chest.
That's fair.
And I'm also assuming it was a butcher knife from her house. This is never mentioned. This is also police reporting from the 60s. So
70s.
70s, sorry. So,
it was the 70s.
Anyway, so he strangles her and then he takes off her clothes to make it seem like she was raped. But when they actually did the autopsy, she was not sexually assaulted at all. And then he goes into her bedroom, takes the mattress from her room, puts it on top of her body in the living room, and then lights it on fire and leaves. I don't know why he did this. He could have just lit her on fire, but whatever.
Oh, well, fuel. It's actually very difficult to actually set a body on fire. The mattresses are very flammable, unfortunately.
Fair point.
So, sorry, I spoke up way too fast about that.
You did, but it's okay.
That's not me speaking from experience.
Yeah. So, he never actually assaulted her. However, fun fact about Alan, he had a long history of robbery and sexual assault charges.
I'm sorry, what?
They looked him up and found out that he had a history of robbery and sexual assault charges, but she was in fact not sexually assaulted. So,
good.
He confesses to everything, right? He also confesses to taking her jewelry as well as $30 in cash off of her body, supposedly, and leaving. That's it. That's all he got.
Okay.
I also saw it mentioned in Milo's notes that he did this to make rent. So, there you go.
I mean,
the sources that he uses is a wiki page for the documentary that I watched, which I think just explains what happened, and also an Instagram true crime account that I will be linking in my notes. So I'm assuming the information that I'm not seeing in my search came from that Instagram. So
that's like where the story ends?
No.
Okay. But are we gonna know what's going on with like the note for...
So what I think happened, so AS is his initials,
Yeah.
Alan Showery. What I think happened is in exchange for him fixing her TV, she was going to get him tickets for him and his girlfriend to go to the theater. Remember, she's a music major.
Oh.
She's got a master's in music. So as a thank you, probably, because she's older, she's in her 40s, probably as a thank you for helping her and fixing her TV so she wouldn't have to pay a shit ton of money for it. She's going to school for a PhD. That's expensive. She probably was like, oh, as a thank you, I'll get you tickets for a date for you and your girlfriend. That's what I speculate happened. Now, if he did leave the first time and then come back, I think she might have written that note after he left as a reminder, or she wrote it down before he was supposed to get there, just as a reminder to herself that she needed to go get those tickets after he fixed the TV. So she was my speculation is that she was going to give him those tickets as a thank you for fixing her TV, which he never did. He comes clean about everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the trial, he decides to plead not guilty.
What the fuck?
I know. But the trial ends in a hung jury because the story is so convoluted that they convicted him because the ghost possessed an old coworker. It's so convoluted that they didn't believe him. They didn't believe anyone. So they were like, we can't confidently say that he did this because it sounds so crazy. So it ended in a hung jury. Now,
I mean, yeah, I could have told you that. I'm sorry.
So he ended up getting a retrial later on. And in that time, he changed his plea to guilty and was given 14 years in prison. He's now out on parole.
That's it?
Well, obviously he's out on parole, but he's probably dead now.
Honestly, probably, but that's it?
It was the 70s.
14 years for killing somebody and burning the body. That's okay. Let's go
Well,
through the
also, it wasn't premeditated. Well, maybe it was.
Okay, so
Second degree.
Okay, so depending on what happened, you have, if it's the second story where he left to get his tools and come back, that's first degree murder because he plotted it on the way there.
Yeah.
Okay, so even
I mean, technically in both cases he plotted it on the way there, but I don't think he intentionally agreed to fix her TV to rob her. I think it was an afterthought of, oh, I have access to her house, I'm gonna rob and kill her.
yeah, I mean, at the very
Either way, he premeditated it at least 24 hours in advance.
yeah. So unfortunately, you kind of have to like find the evidence for that. So they probably could only get him on second degree. However,
And they robbed her.
And he robbed her. But on top of that, there's the arson charge for setting on the mattress on fire. There's desecration of a corpse. There's destruction of evidence. There are so many other charges he could have been brought for. Only for all of that to be brought to 14 years.
I don't know. I really don't know. So it's believed, rumor has it, that the reason why he switched up his sentencing after that first trial was because he was being haunted by her spirit in prison. That's the end of my notes. Now you can talk.
I mean, good. But like also just based on what we know about America in the 70s, I'm very surprised that he only got 14 years based off both the murder, like how the murder played out, and
Yeah. So, one, I'm surprised that he only got 14 years as well. But also, two, given how
weird
the whole case is, I'm not surprised that he didn't get a longer sentence because they were probably just like,
what the fuck
14
is
years
going on?
because the whole thing is so weird that it's like, and also like the gravity of the murder, I think might have been overshadowed by how weird the accusation came.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think they were so focused on the fact that he was accused by a ghost and not the fact that he killed a woman. So I think the sentencing might have reflected just how weird it was. Because if he had just been convicted of that murder, I think he probably would have gotten longer. But because he literally was convicted by a ghost, it's like 14 years, I guess.
Yeah, like that whole thing is like very odd. And honestly,
It would also be a good tentative sentence of long enough for you to learn your lesson, but short enough that if you were innocent, you still have a life left, but we can't like, yes, you have her jewelry. Obviously that makes you very guilty. Like we've got this here, but like the evidence pointing to the fact that you have her jewelry is a very odd situation. So if for some reason this was just some elaborate ruse or you set up by these two women, whatever, 14 years is short enough that if somehow you have to go through the legal system to get appeal and whatnot, like it's not super long. I think it was like an in the middle situation. You know what I mean? That's my guesstimate on why.
I mean, it's a very weird situation. I mean, obviously,
and he's probably dead now, anyways.
Probably, but like it was a weird situation, and obviously there's like a lot that goes into it. But going to prison for any amount of time, regardless of whether or not you did it, is going to be very, very hard on you.
Yeah.
So, especially if you have somebody who's haunting you.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, and I know I'm playing into the idea that this was not. I don't have a reason as to why this would be anything else, but after 5.5 months to randomly accuse an orderly that you barely know even works at the building, who happens to match the notes initials that was not released publicly in a cold case through possession, and managed to guess that she was wearing jewelry that was stolen, that was given to the girlfriend that you may or may not know exists. Either they really, really well planned that shit out, or Teresita did come back to accuse her murderer. There's only two options here. Either Alan pissed someone off, and the girlfriend and Remy, who did not know each other, planned this out, or Teresita came back and accused her murderer of murder. But it was a cold case for 5.5 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and honestly, if I'm going to be 1,000% honest, that's not the length. That's not like, oh, How do I put this slightly? That's a lukewarm case. That's not quite a cold case.
No, they literally, the day after the murder, had no leads. They had no evidence except for this AS. Nothing.
I'm honestly surprised they didn't start like looking into the workplace or anything like that. Like they immediately went to
But here's the thing. But the thing is, so he was not an orderly for her area. So they worked in the same hospital, but there's like, they were not even acquaintances.
I mean, that's fair, but like why not like look in the area? Like you have at least something to go off of. Why not utilize it?
They could have also just not been wanting to do their job.
That's true.
That's also an option.
We're also expecting police to want to do their job.
Yeah. So,
And that's holding them to a standard that they can't even hold themselves to. Let's be honest.
yeah. Now, also the guy who had been trying to get in contact with the police, Jose, he had been trying to get in contact with someone to take him seriously for a while. Joe was the first person to actually sit down and listen to him and take him seriously. So we don't know how long they've been trying to contact the police to get genuine help. So it could have been sooner. And they just, because remember, bare minimum, this happened over 2 weeks, but it was 5 months after she was killed that he finally managed to get wind of the fact that this couple was saying that they had information on the case.
So, like, I wonder how much of this is because she was a Filipino woman. She was not white. She probably lived alone. She
Yeah.
was in her 40s. A lot of it's probably like, oh, she's not
The perfect victim.
not necessarily a perfect victim, but she's not super high up in like she's not white essentially.
Yeah. And the couple that have been trying to contact the police, Remy and Jose, he was a doctor at the hospital, I think. Or he was just doctor in general, but his wife was also a respiratory therapist with her. So they worked in the same wing.
So I wonder if if all of this had like something to do with the fact that they're Filipino. They're not.
Probably. The investigator was white.
Yeah, there it is.
But he listened to them, so.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of cases like this, regardless of the supernatural aspect, a lot of cases like this can be connected back to who the victim was, what they look like, where they were from, what they did for a living, how, like, if they lived alone or not. Okay. If it was a white suburban mom who lived with her family who gets murdered brutally like this, the media, the press, everybody's going to be all over it. Mm-hmm. But because it was a Filipino woman who more than likely lived alone she lived alone. She was in her 40s. She was away from her family. She didn't, from what I understand, outside of Remy, she didn't have much of a community.
I mean, she was too busy.
Yeah, she was far too busy, so she didn't have like people who were gonna like ask about her. And then you have another couple who is trying to speak out. Okay, well let's look down, like go down the list.
I think lived in a different town.
Probably. Okay, so let's go down the list. Yes, the doctor and well respected like in their field, but they're Filipino. Mm-hmm. They're not white. In the 70s. And then okay, well let's look at the suspect. Oh, he's black. But the history of shit like this, it's not, there is no urgency unless either the perpetrator or the victim are high up members of society. Like, for instance, Ted Bundy, he got so much attention because he was white and he was attractive. And everybody was all over that. So it's to really like, because I guarantee you, had it been a white woman, they would have been all over that AS note.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So what probably happened, in my personal opinion, if she was not possessed, is everyone knew who did it, and they knew exactly how, and she had to pretend to be possessed because it was the only way to get the police attention enough to give them the information that everyone already knew to be able to convict her killer. Those are the only two options. Either she did this, or this woman had to pretend to be possessed in order to make this happen.
And I would not blame her for pretending to be possessed so that way her friend could get justice.
That's a good friend right there. Because they were close.
They were very close from what you told me.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's very frustrating.
I love it when police don't do their fucking jobs.
Yeah, well, it's a tale's old as time.
Yeah, which is why we should not have them.
Anyway,
And
I agree. Anyway,
and that's our psychos.
I didn't want it to sound like I was saying any way to change the subject. 'Cause I didn't want to agree. I agree. I'm also changing the subject because we've been recording for almost 3 hours.
Well, it's been a while since we recorded this long.
I know. So anyway, that's my story of Teresita Basa.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I don't like that you veered into my lane, but I also enjoyed that you veered into my lane because, like, you did it.
I didn't know what to talk about, and I need to start working on my next episode, and it's a lot emotionally for Elmo.
No, it's
So.
okay. I enjoyed it. I was just like,
My next episode is not going to be so fun.
Yeah. What am I talking about next? Oh, I know what I'm talking about next.
Don't tell me. I want to go in surprised.
Of course you do.
I mean, I'm always going to be surprised, but like, I want to go in surprised.
You want to go in with nothing.
Nothing.
Okay. I think I'm actually. Can I give a small spoiler?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I'm starting out next episode with a nursery rhyme.
Oh, fuck you. I'm not. The opposite of a nursery rhyme.
Like, no. This person inspired a nursery rhyme. It's fine. This one's an older case, so.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Good night, everybody. Stay safe. Keep learning.
Fuck the police.
Coming straight from the underground.
Good night.
Good night.